In the attic of a Salem home, untouched since the 1700s, behind a brick false wall, they found it, a leather-bound book reeking of smoke and damp. Inside, a list of names, 137 to be exact, all dated between 1692 and 1720, each name followed by a short note: confession obtained, land seized, or, most haunting of all, acquisition complete. None of these people are recorded in public Salem witch trial history. None exist in burial records, no markers, no families left behind. Just silence. And 3 names signed in a different ink, over and over. Ezekiel Blackwell, Nathaniel Blackwell, Josiah Blackwell. Judge, Reverend, Sheriff. 1 family. 3 positions of absolute power in a terrified colony. And 1 obsession, divine inheritance. Through blood, through law, through flame. You've heard of the Salem trials. You think it was fear, hysteria, a momentary madness. But what if it wasn't madness at all? What if it was method? The ledger you're about to hear from was never meant to surface. The Blackwell family paid dearly to keep it hidden. But now, we read it. And once you do, you'll never see justice, faith, or history the same way again. They weren't just brothers, they were an empire. Judge Ezekiel Blackwell, eldest, stoic, and cold-eyed, dispensed judgment from the bench with scripture on his lips and hunger in his heart. His voice, calm as a hanging rope, carried more weight in Salem than any governor's decree. Behind his robe, ledgers, maps, deeds, he didn't just sentence the accused, he acquired them. Reverend Nathaniel Blackwell, middle brother, the fire. His sermons turned fear into fuel. His eyes never blinked. He claimed to see spirits, demons, the devil himself in the twitch of a hand or the pitch of a cry. But what he really saw was opportunity. Every soul he damned gave his family another piece of heaven on earth. And Sheriff Josiah Blackwell, the hammer. Broad-shouldered and silent, he did the work no one else could stomach, dragged screaming women from their beds, oversaw confessions no man survived whole, his walking stick carved with runes, drenched in secrets. 3 men, 1 town, no checks, no balances, no mercy. They didn't protect Salem, they owned it, and when the fires of the witch trials began to roar, they didn't run. They stoked them. They say paper forgets, but not this ledger. Bound in rough leather, its pages reeked of old blood and pine tar. Mercy Blackwell, the niece, was the first to find it. Locked in her Uncle Ezekiel's study, hidden beneath scripture and sermons, this was no holy record. Every name it held was a death sentence. Not the ones the world knew, not Bridget Bishop or Rebecca Nurse. These were different names, forgotten ones, dozens, maybe hundreds, names never recorded in court, people never officially tried, people who vanished. Each entry followed the same ritual: name, date of acquisition, value of land, final note, matter resolved. Sometimes acquisition complete, sometimes just burned. And beside every name, the initials of one of the 3 brothers, a mark of who handled the extraction, like merchants logging inventory, not human souls. Mercy read them by candlelight, her hands trembling. These were not trials, they were transactions. The Blackwells didn't just benefit from the witch panic, they orchestrated it. This ledger wasn't a journal, it was a blueprint for generational power built on the backs of the buried. She closed the book, but from that moment, she could never shut her eyes the same way again. They called it the root cellar. But Mercy knew better. It was built beneath Reverend Nathaniel Blackwell's church, an unlit, earthen hollow, its air damp and tight with mildew and something fouler. Locals assumed it was for food storage, maybe bodies during the cold months. But no one was ever seen using it. Until one moonless night. Mercy, barefoot and shaking, crept down after hearing screams swallowed by the chapel's floorboards. What she found, no sermon could absolve. A stone circle carved with ancient glyphs, not Latin. Older. A woman, bound and gagged, her eyes wide with the final prayer she'd never finish. And the brothers, Ezekiel, Nathaniel, Josiah, robed, chanting, hands outstretched, eyes blank with something not of this world, not faith, not madness. Submission. To what? At the center of the circle, a brazier glowed with green flame. As the chant rose, the woman's body arched, then collapsed. Silent. Smoke curled from her mouth like incense. Nathaniel turned to the others. "Her land now lies clean," he whispered. "Let it be signed tomorrow." This was no church. This was an altar, and whatever they served down there, it listened. Mercy hadn't slept in days, not because she feared the Blackwells, but because of what the ledger had begun to do. It whispered. She had hidden the pages she copied in a wooden box under her bed, sealed in linen. Yet each night, just before sleep could take her, the faintest scratching sounds echoed inside, like a quill against parchment, like names being written. One night, she opened it. The ink on several entries had shifted, as if rewritten by an unseen hand. New phrases appeared beneath familiar names. She never confessed. "We buried him deep, but he still speaks. Mercy sees." That last one made her drop the pages. It wasn't guilt. It was recognition. Like the dead knew she was watching, and approved. And that's when the dreams started. Dark corridors, endless stairs, women with sewn lips whispering without mouths. In every dream, Mercy stood in a courtroom of ash, while Judge Ezekiel's gavel cracked not on wood, but bone. Were they warning her, or recruiting her? She woke each morning more exhausted, but not afraid. The dead had chosen her now. And the Blackwells? They had no idea their sins were beginning to speak back. It began with a scream, not from a prisoner, but from a deputy. In early October, the east wing of Salem's oldest meeting house collapsed during a storm. Beneath the rubble, workers discovered a hidden stone chamber, completely sealed, with no record of its existence. Inside, bones, dozens, arranged in a spiral around a carved altar stained with something long-dried and dark. A pit at the center descended into blackness. No torch could fully penetrate. Word reached Sheriff Josiah within hours. By morning, the area was sealed off and labeled structurally unsafe. But Mercy had seen it, heard it. That night, she crept to the site with William. The altar wasn't just for show. It was a gate. Around the edge were Latin inscriptions, phrases Mercy had seen only once before, in her Uncle Nathaniel's handwritten sermons, verses about purification through torment, about extracting darkness to make way for light. But this wasn't about light. This was about power. The bones weren't arranged randomly. They were ritual offerings. Some still had iron cuffs attached, proof they had not died freely. As Mercy stared into the pit, a warm gust of air rose, like breath. Something down there was awake. When the Blackwell brothers preached redemption, they didn't mean salvation. They meant sacrifice. In their private sermons, never shared with the public, Reverend Nathaniel Blackwell taught that pain was the only true cleanser of the soul, that blood, not baptism, brought clarity, that torment brought obedience, and that willingness was irrelevant. In the pit beneath the church, William and Mercy found more than bones. They found records, written in Mercy's father's hand, stacks of parchment sealed in wax, organized by month, labeled with names and methods. Iron fasting masks, sleep deprivation, bloodletting. Each file documented how long it took for the accused to break, How many days before hallucinations began? How many more before confessions were extracted? And how many didn't survive long enough to confess anything at all? This wasn't justice. This was experimentation. Somewhere between theology and torture, the Blackwell doctrine had mutated. What began as religious authority had become psychological domination, designed to rewrite the minds of their victims, or erase them entirely. To own a soul, one page read, one must first break the body. This wasn't about the devil, this was about becoming him. When the executions began, the public saw only what they were meant to see. Clean ropes, final prayers, a drop, an end. But those who saw the aftermath, the eyes of the dead, said something different, because the eyes didn't close, not in the usual way. The bodies recovered from Gallows Hill had their eyelids peeled back, pupils wide, glassy, like they'd seen something in their final seconds, something no one should see and live. Sheriff Josiah always ensured they were buried quickly. No open caskets, no lingering families, no questions. But William, who once helped dig a grave under orders, noticed something more disturbing. The same expression, every single time. Terror, not of death, but of recognition. As if, in their final breath, the condemned saw who, or what, was really behind the gallows. Was it God, or something else pretending to be him? Mercy's journal entries grew frantic. The sermons are masks, the trials are rituals, the ledger is a contract, she wrote. She had copied a phrase from one of her uncle's hidden scrolls. Only in the moment before death, the soul sees who holds the leash. And in Salem, the leash was never held by men alone. It was William who found it. A door beneath the pulpit, hidden behind rotting hymnals and warped floorboards in the old Salem meeting house. He'd been searching for records, but instead uncovered something far older than paper. A ladder descending into stone. Mercy waited above as he lowered himself, lantern in hand. 10 minutes passed, then 20. When he returned, his face was pale, drained of color and sound. "There are carvings," he whispered. "They're not English, not Latin, not even human." The room was round, windowless, and choked with the stench of oil and mold. But at the center stood a stone altar, slick with age, carved with symbols that pulsed under flame. Behind it, a mural, a three-headed figure, each face twisted in agony and triumph. Mercy recognized the symbol etched above it, the same glyph she'd seen stamped on the back cover of the secret ledger. "This room wasn't built by us," William said. And then the realization struck. The trials, the accusations, the executions, they weren't just greed. They were offerings, made in this room for something ancient, something still listening, something that had always been in the church. The entries began in careful script, dates, observations, then fear, then terror. Mercy's personal diary, discovered in 1893 inside a hollowed-out beam in the ruins of her family's estate, offers the only first-person account of what she witnessed in those final weeks. She speaks of whispers in the walls, of hearing her name spoken by no human voice, of dreams in which her uncles stood over the stone altar, wearing robes of black feathers, chanting in a tongue that bled from their mouths like ink. In one entry, she describes waking to find her bedding soaked in river water. A fish lay dead beside her head, and across her chest, a symbol carved into her skin. The same glyph from the hidden room. She had no memory of it. Another page simply reads, "It watches when I sleep, it listens when I pray, and it speaks in my Father's voice." The final entry, dated October 20th, 1692. "They said the last offering must be one of our own blood. I hear them moving below. I know who they've chosen. If this book is found, tell the truth. Let it end here. That page is smeared in dried blood, and Mercy Blackwell was never seen again. They said it was just a root cellar. But when workers demolished the Blackwell estate in 1902, they found the sealed stone door buried 10 feet below the foundation. Its surface was engraved with markings older than English, older than Latin, somehow pulsing as if resisting the light. It took 4 men to open it. Inside, a subterranean chamber lined with bones, not in piles but arranged, ritually, a spiral of ribs, a wall of femurs, a ceiling of skulls, their jaws forced open. At the center, a stone slab, and on it, the Blackwell seal carved deep in the rock, a triangle inside a circle pierced by 3 vertical lines, matching the exact shape found in Mercy's final diary entry carved across her chest. But the strangest part, the slab was warm. They brought in scholars, historians, occultists. None could agree on the purpose, but all agreed on this. That chamber predated the house, that the Blackwells had built their home above it deliberately, and beneath one of the loose stones in the wall, a tiny charred book. Inside, a single phrase repeated over 137 pages: blood sanctifies, bones remember, power returns. They resealed the door, but some say it opens on its own. They started appearing in 1921. People called them the Hollow Ones, pale strangers wandering Salem's edges, their eyes vacant, their speech fragmented with phrases from another century. Police picked them up, thinking they were vagrants, but none had fingerprints, none matched any known identity, and every one of them had the same strange scar on their chest, a triad of vertical lines, fresh, as if carved days ago. Doctors said it made no medical sense. Historians noticed something far more disturbing. The phrases they muttered matched lines from Puritan sermons lost to time, some of which had never been published. A few researchers dug deeper and discovered something chilling. The Hollow Ones matched descriptions of townsfolk who had gone missing in 1693. Height, bone structure, even facial resemblance. It was as if they had returned, but empty. A team from Miskatonic University took samples. Blood tests revealed non-human anomalies, DNA sequences not found in any species catalogued on Earth. Their conclusion? The Hollow Ones weren't survivors. They were containers, and every time one of them vanished from their holding cells, the stone slab beneath the old Blackwell site grew warmer and began to hum. They weren't walking back into town. Something was coming through them. In 1923, Reverend Thaddeus Hawkins was sent to Salem by the Eastern Diocese. He had heard rumors, vanishing people, dead-eyed wanderers, and an ancient house whose cellars no architect could map. Locals avoided it, calling it the Breathing Stone. They said the Blackwell house burned down in 1871, but Hawkins found no fire records. In fact, no official map had the property listed after 1720. It had been erased. But Hawkins was not easily shaken. He entered the remains of the old foundation with only a lantern and a notebook. He returned 2 days later. Barely speaking. His hands trembled constantly. His hair, once black, had turned fully white. What little he wrote afterward was incoherent, but scholars later decoded a single line repeated 19 times. They are not dead, they never were. We gave them names, and they wore them. He died 6 weeks later in a sanitarium, eyes open, whispering in Latin that predated Rome. An autopsy revealed something no one could explain. His larynx had been burned from the inside, yet there was no smoke damage elsewhere in his body. Whatever Reverend Hawkins saw beneath the Blackwell estate wasn't just evil, it was awake, and it had spoken through him. While America tore itself apart in 1861, the Blackwell lineage thrived in the shadows. The chaos of war gave them what they needed: silence, movement, and a mask. Records show that 3 cousins, Jonathan, Elias, and Ruth Blackwell, traveled south under the guise of Union medical missionaries. But wherever they arrived, entire towns began reporting mass fevers, hallucinations, and vanishing children. A burned church in Franklin, Tennessee revealed a hidden cellar filled with iron restraints and leather-bound books inscribed with blood codes, matching the handwriting of Reverend Nathaniel Blackwell, dead over 100 years prior. Was it a copycat, a ritual heirloom passed down, or something darker? In Georgia, plantation families reported being approached by land consultants, offering spiritual cleansing in exchange for deed signatures. Weeks later, those same families were reported dead of cholera, their estates mysteriously absorbed into private Blackwell trusts. One Union captain wrote in his journal, "They wear the faces of men, but they serve no army I've known. The fields rot around them, and the dogs howl when they pass." The Blackwells didn't just survive the war, they fed on it. And when the smoke cleared, their control was wider, deeper, and utterly untraceable. In 1874, Captain James Morrison of the Texas Rangers received a strange report, a mass grave unearthed by floodwaters outside an abandoned mission, 42 bodies, all disfigured, with identical brands on their ribs. The site? Land owned by the Blackwell Agricultural Cooperative. But the name Blackwell didn't appear anywhere on the surface. Only when Morrison interrogated a dying drifter did the truth begin to surface. "They're not farmers," the man rasped. "They buy silence. They buy memory. They dig pits for the soul." Driven by obsession, Morrison began to map the disappearances. What he found shook him to the bone, a network of vanishings stretching from Massachusetts to Missouri to Texas, all centered on land titles, church deeds, and orphanage charters, each one looping back to Blackwell shell companies. He wasn't just chasing killers, he was chasing a bloodline with legal immunity and spiritual camouflage. But Morrison made a mistake. He wrote it all down. His ledger, 182 pages long, vanished from Ranger records in 1881. Official cause of death: snakebite on a hunting trip. But the bite left no puncture marks, only a thin brand shaped like an inverted keyhole on his chest. The hunt had begun and was already over. It was 1912 when the last surviving member of the original Blackwell bloodline, Elias Nathaniel Blackwell, died in his sleep, or so the papers claimed. But his nurse, who vanished days later, told her sister a different story before disappearing. He didn't die. He was taken, and he knew it was coming. He welcomed it. That same week, a janitor cleaning the Salem Historical Archives uncovered a false wall behind a cellar shelf. Inside, a wooden trunk sealed with iron. Inside that trunk, a ledger dating back to 1692, dozens of land deeds and church scrolls, and one fragile letter addressed to the descendants. It read, "You are the inheritors of a divine transaction. What was sown in flame must be reaped in silence. The pit remains, the key remains, and the blood is still due." Scholars denied its authenticity. The trunk vanished from the archives in 1931. The archivist? Committed to an asylum the same year. Today, the Blackwell Trust still owns nearly 60% of Salem's commercial real estate under 41 different LLCs. Their churches still hold midnight services. Their orphanages still receive generous tax exemptions. Their names are no longer on the books, but their legacy is, and it is waiting.